Hello kids! Welcome to today's session. This is Shweta Roy, your English master teacher at Vedantu, and today we will be beginning with an amazing session on the very beautiful and colorful poem The Bangle Sellers, which is from your ICSE Class 10. Okay, so before beginning with today's poem, a very simple question to all of you, dear. How many of you have visited a village fair and have actually seen, stalls of bangles, or you have seen, sellers selling bangles, bangle sellers selling bangles? This is still there in villages. So how many of you have actually seen the true color of Indian villages? Please do let me know in the comment section. And with that, we proceed with a very beautiful poem, The Bangle Sellers, which is written by an amazing poet, none other than Sarojini Naidu. So, before that, I would like to remind you, you can boost your exam season with all our micro courses just at ₹1. So, you have 2,000 plus topic-wise courses which you can buy. This is from grade 6 to 12, CBSE, ICSE, JEE and NEET. And if you still haven't registered for the Vedantu Scholarship Admission Test, that is VSAT 2020, what are you waiting for, guys? Hurry up, get yourself registered and win a short scholarship. So yes, we are going to begin with the bangle sellers. So from the very picture, you can assume that the poem is going to be really very colorful, and you can see all the hues of bangles, and the picture that the poet has painted is a very colorful and vivid. Okay, so she has actually brought the entire Indian culture in our mind, right? So let me remind you, okay, when we'll deal with the poem, when we'll deal with the poet as well. So at that time, we'll talk about the background when this poem was written simultaneously, so that you could very well correlate. And about the poet, so Sarojini Naidu was an Indian. I hope you all know who Sarojini Naidu is. She doesn't need an introduction. Anyways, so she was an Indian political activist and a poet, and she was a proponent of civil rights, women's emancipation as in women liberation, anti-imperialist ideas. She was an important figure in India's struggle for independence from colonial rule, and Naidu's work earned her the sobriquet of Nightingale of India. Naidu was awarded the Kesari Hind Medal by British government for her work during the plague epidemic in India, and but she later returned this. As you know that Rabindranath Tagore, yes, he also returned his title of knight after the Jallianwala Bagh massacre. So she also returned this the award of Kesari Hind, the medal of Kesari Hind, after the Jallianwala Bagh massacre as a protest. And then her poetry is best known for intensely lyrical pieces replete with imagery and contemporary Indian themes. She portrays the beauty and variety of India and its tradition. So this is very, very important. As when I began the session, I told you how many of you have actually visited Indian villages. There lies the true heart of India, right? So she portrays very beautifully and very vividly the picture of India and Indian culture and tradition. India celebrates her birthday as National Women's Day on 13th February. So we know that International Women's Day is on 8th March, but how many of us know that there is a National Women's Day as well, and that is celebrated on 13th February, and that is the birthday of Sarojini Naidu. So such was her contribution towards women liberation. So the Bangle Sellers, when we see the title, The Bangle Sellers, we can very well understand bangles are worn by women, right? So, bangles is equal to womanhood, right? Because bangles are obviously worn by women, and women adorn themselves by wearing bangles. So bangles become, still now the women, they still wear bangles, and in villages also, particularly the women, they give importance to bangles. So bangles are, it has symbolic significance. So after marriage, there is certain kind of bangle that women have. If you have seen the Punjabis, so how many Punjabis are there out there? So Punjabis, they still have that chura system, right? So they are what? They are nothing but bangles. So that is, that's a great beauty, okay? And that has its own symbolic significance as well. So bangles are intimately connected with a woman's life, and it celebrates womanhood. So Sarojini Naidu is a feminist poet, and she spoke a lot about women liberation, women emancipation, womanhood. And this entire poetry is actually about womanhood. It's a celebration of womanhood. It's a, feminist feminist poem, right? And another point that you need to keep in mind while you go deeper into the poem is, this poem was written at a time when India was under the domination of British rule. So we as Indians, we have still, we cannot, move out still from the hangover of the colonial domination. So we still have this colonial hangover in us, right? So she tried to, remind the audience about the beauty of Indianness, and she's an Indian poet. She continuously reminds the beauty of Indian tradition, Indian culture, village fare. She talks about village fare. She gives a picturesque and a vivid description of Indian villages where bangle sellers are selling bangles. They are crying out. So you have seen that whenever there is any person who is selling something, how they cry out. They try to sell their materials, they try to sell their items by crying out, right? So that is still there, and that is the very Indian essence that she tries to bring about throughout her poem. And now let's move ahead with the poem. I will also read out the, some lines from the poem. I'll read out the poem as well, okay? So let's have an introduction to the poem. Written by the prominent Indian poet and politician, The Bangle Sellers is a poem exploring the life of Indian women. As I already told you, Indian culture and tradition revolving around women. So it talks about the Indian tradition, Indian culture, and the word bangle itself suggests that it has close associations with the life of women, right? In most of her poems, Sarojini Naidu writes on the theme of Indian culture and people. Her poems are focused on Indian settings, very, very, very important, and this poem is also not an exception. In its Indianness, the poem resembles another poem of hers that is in Bazaars of Hyderabad. So if you get a chance to read her another poem that is the Bazaars of Hyderabad, do read that poem. That's also a beautiful one. The poem revolves around bangles, which is an important ornament for embellishment of women in Indian society. As I told you about the Punjabi chura, that is still there, and also the other women, also non-Punjabis, also they wear certain kind of bangles after marriage, before marriage. So there are certain systems and customs that women, particularly women, it's meant for them, right? So that is not only, it has symbolic significance, but not only that, it is also an ornament for embellishment. So they use also these bangles as ornament for embellishment. In the poem, the bangle sellers are at the temple fair and they shout out to the people passing by to have a look at the bangles. They urge them to buy the bangles for their daughters and wives. Now let's move ahead with the poem. And I will read out the stanza 1 and then I'll explain it to you. Bangle sellers are we who bear our shining loads to the temple fair, who will buy these delicate, bright, rainbow tinted colors of light. lustrous tokens of radiant lives for happy daughters and happy wives. So, you can see that the poem begins with the speakers. So, here we can say that the bangle sellers are the speaker, but whether there is only one speaker or whether there are many speakers, maybe there are many speakers like bangle sellers altogether. She has, made the bangle sellers unite into a class. Okay, so though there are many bangle sellers speaking together, so they are the speakers, but they have been united into one. So the class of bangle speakers, bangle sellers, right? So they are introducing themselves as bangle sellers who sell their articles at the temple fair, and they call out to the people to buy their bangles. These hawkers describe their bangles as delicate, bright, rainbow tinted circles of light. So you can see over here how are the bangles described. They are very delicate, they can break easily, they are very brightly colored. Rainbow tinted means tinted is colored. The colors are, you can see in the picture also, they are so colorful, right? Circles of light, they are circular and they are, emitting radiance. So they are like circles of light. So it is a metaphor over here. The poet is introducing a metaphor. They advertise by questioning who will buy these bangles for their daughters and wives. So they are asking who is going to buy. जैसे बोलते हैं ना ले लो bangles ले लो, ऐसे ही बोलते हैं. So that is how they are trying to sell their products by shouting out to their customers. Okay. And so as I told you about the class essence also, so I know that there are several speakers, but it appears as if there is a single speaker. This is due to the fact that all of them have a same purpose. And what is the purpose? To sell their bangles, right? So therefore, that we can call as class essence. Okay. And then we will move ahead with the second stanza. Okay. Now, before moving ahead, it is important to note here that though the speakers of the poem are several, this I have already told you. So the bangle sellers are also called, the bangles are also called lustrous tokens of radiant lives. Okay. Now lustrous means what? Very bright. That is lustrous, shining. Lustrous actual meaning is shining. Tokens of radiant lives. So these are the tokens. These are the symbols of what? Radiant is again bright lives. So those the colorful bangles are associated with the colorful lives of women. Okay. Now why are their lives colorful and vivid, and what are the stages that they pass through? That we will see when we are going to move ahead with the poem. It shows us the Indianness of the poem, where bangle sellers are brought on special occasions and are associated with happiness and prosperity. So now we will move ahead with the second stanza, and I will read out the second stanza to you. Some are meet for a maiden's wrist, silver and blue as the mountain mist. Some are flushed like the buds that dream on the tranquil brow of a woodland stream. Some are aglow with the bloom that cleaves to the limpid glory of newborn leaves. So the second stanza, the speaker talks about the different kind of bangles that they have. Okay. Some of the bangles are suitable for maiden's wrist, who's a maiden, an unmarried girl, a young woman. Okay. And they are of silver and blue in color. And this silver and blue in color is just like the mountain mist. So here we have a simile. The use of the word like is there. So simile means comparison between two things, using the word like or as. So here the color, blue color of the bangle is compared with the color of the mountain mist. Some of them are flushed, that is pink and red in color, like flower buds growing beside a woodland stream. So some of the bangles are red in color. Flushed means red. Blushing means when you feel shy and your cheeks become red or pinkish in tinge, right? Flushing means when you become angry and your cheeks still become red. That is flushing, okay? So similarly, the color of the pink and the light red bangles are like flower buds that is growing beside a woodland stream. Still others are green and glowing like the transparent beauty of newborn leaves. So some are green, some are blue, some are red, and each bangle is compared with some other thing like blue bangles are compared with mountain mist, reds are compared with flower buds growing on beside a woodland stream, and green bangles are compared with the beauty of a newborn leaf. So you have to remember which bangle is compared, which color is compared with what. That can be asked as a question. In Indian society, bangles have important cultural and religious place. Different colored bangles are worn by different stages of life. Blue, green, silver are generally worn by young maidens. It is interesting to note that the poet uses the word flushed like the buds that dream. So flushed, as I told you, flushed means when you become angry, your cheeks become red. So that redness is associated with the buds that are dreaming. Now here, the word dream is very important, and it suggests the buds. First of all, let's see the two words, buds and dreams, okay? Now, buds suggest chastity, okay? Chastity or virginity. So, when the bride is not married, she is chaste, she is a virgin, right? So, she is a young maiden. And the buds, she is not full bloomed into a flower. So, therefore, she is compared with a bud, which would be blooming after her marriage. Okay, so before that she is chaste, she is a virgin. Then buds that dreams present before us. So she very beautifully, she selects those particular images that contribute to the image of the particular thing that she is trying to symbolize, and we get a clear picture of that particular item, right? And then she is talking about the young girls dreaming of a marriage. So as I told you, when we go through the poem, we will see that the different colored bangles also talk about the various stages, because we will look at this poem from a feminist angle as well, and we can very well see that it talks about the various stages that a girl has to pass. First, she's an unmarried woman, she's an unmarried maiden, and at that time she's a virgin, she's chaste, and she's dreaming of her marriage, right? So that is why the color of the bangle that she's wearing is associated with buds that dream. So that is very symbolic, it's a metaphor. In this stanza, she is presenting, the author is presenting the stage of youth in a woman's life. Moving ahead, stanza 3. Some are like fields of sunlit corn, meet for a bride on her bridal morn. Some like the flame of a marriage fire, or rich with the hue of a heart's desire. Tinkling, luminous, tender and clear, like her bridal laughter and bridal tear. Now the last portion, bridal laughter and bridal tear, please underline, because that is very important and that can be asked, that is a frequently asked question. So in the third stanza, what is the Bangle seller saying? That some of her bangles are yellow. So now comparing the yellow colored bangles with fields of sunlit corn. Bangles of this color are worn by whom? Worn by a bride when she is she's married and during her bridal morning. Morn means morning. Okay. Some of the bangles that have red, some of the bangles they are red in color, bright red in color. They represent the flame of a newly turned bride's marriage fire. So again, bringing in the custom, the religion, the tradition of Indianness. when she talks about the marriage fire, because the foreigners, they did not have this custom of moving around, the fire that we follow, the ritual that we follow when in marriages, moving around the fire. They were British, so they did not have this custom. They were Christians, did not have their custom, right? So again, she's trying to remind the customs to the Indians who were almost on the verge of forgetting their own customs because they were completely dominated by the British. So they were wreaking a havoc in the minds of the Indians as well. So they had not only colonized physically but also mentally. So the Indians, they were colonized somehow or the other, even in the mind. Okay, so therefore she is trying to remind of the traditions, of the cultures, of the values of the Indian life. And that is why she is reminding of the marriage fire by comparing the bangles, the red bangles, and she says that it is the representation of the color of the marriage fire. The red bangles also stand for her heart's desire, and the bangles are making this beautiful sound of tinkling, right? And luminous means bright, tender and clear. So the bangles are tinkling, luminous, tender and clear. They express her joy, both her joy as well as sorrow. Why is she crying as well as smiling? She is smiling because she is with her husband. She has already been married, so she will be starting a new life. So this is the excitement of starting a new life with her husband. But at the same time, she has left her parents' home. So again, bringing in that tradition. And at the same time, she's also referring to the patriarchal system of marriage, where the woman has to leave the family of her own, and she has to go to the husband's house. So the entire patriarchal society, the custom, here she is talking about. So I have already mentioned that we will take care of two very important points when we are going through the poem. One is the feminist angle of the poem, and the second is the values, traditions, culture, Indianness, right? So we are finding both over here. Moving ahead, what we find striking is the use of the words bridal laughter and bridal tears, which I just now mentioned. These convey the whole of a woman's transition in life from a maiden to a wife, and all the emotions attached with it in a single line. So how beautifully she, she paints the picture of the emotions associated in a woman life, and no one else can actually do this. We cannot, someone else cannot actually take care of the emotions that a woman undergoes when she goes through this period of transition, leaving her family that she so long was with whom she so long was, and now moving ahead with someone else. So this is a period of transition, and she is, the feeling that she's undergoing, that has been beautifully expressed by the poet Sarojini Naidu. And we will again remind you, I'll again remind you that this is a feminist poem, so we should look at it from a feminist angle as well. So this stanza marks the transition of a life from maiden to a wife. This transition is very important, and if you are a woman or if you are a girl, you can very well relate to this poem, because all our emotions are very well reflected in this poem. Moving ahead in the stanza 4, let us have a look at the 4th stanza and the final stanza. Some are purple and gold flecked grey, for she who has journeyed through life midway, whose hands have cherished, whose love has blessed, and cradled fair son on her faithful breast, and serves her household in fruitful pride, and worships the God at her husband's side. Very, very important. Final stanza, the speakers continue again to advertise, and they say that Some bangles are purple and gold flecked grey, and these are suitable for whom? The middle-aged women who had almost crossed, she's in the midway of her life. Okay, so she had journeyed almost through her life, and now she has. They are for her who has raised her children well and remained faithful to her husband and family. Again, we have to see the feminist angle. So, in a patriarchal society, it's still believed, we are still living in a patriarchal society, so it is still believed that an ideal woman should be very faithful to her husband, should be very faithful to her family, and should be a good mother. So yes, when she's talking about raising her children, remaining faithful to her husband and family, she is doing it from a feminist angle. She is referring to a patriarchal social setup. So since that was a time when India was, so we have now progressed a lot in terms of feminism, so in terms of womanhood, definitely. But at that time, there was a, conservative outlook. So she could not directly state her views, but she is very subtly reflecting the patriarchal society, the patriarchal system, the patriarchal setup when she is referring to an ideal woman, the so-called ideal woman who takes care of her husband, who takes care of her children, who takes care of her family. And these bangles are perfect for whom, for her who has maintained her household with pride and worships the gods at her husband's side. Very, very, very typical patriarchal society that she's talking about. So she is a proud woman, and from where is the pride coming? Because she has been faithful to her family and she has been always by the side of her husband and worshipped the gods at her, by her, remaining at the side of her husband. So she is perceiving the qualities, she's reflecting on the qualities of a good wife. So good wife within quotes, again referring to a patriarchal setup. So such a woman is truly deserving the gold, the purple and gold flecked grey bangles. And we should pay attention to the word sons over here. And sons actually mean offspring, right? So offspring, but here she has not written about anything about daughter, because again she is trying to convey, maybe we can interpret in this manner, she's trying to convey the importance of a son in the patriarchal society. So at that point of time, so as I told you, we have progressed from that age, thankfully. At that point of time, son was the only, like, he was regarded as the most important person. Daughter was not given that much value. Okay, so therefore she is using the word sons and not daughters. While it could be a happy coincidence, it could also suggest the ingrained attitude of male preference in the society of Naidu. So that is what is, we always prefer the male child. That is what she is reflecting in the poem. And yes, the Bangle Seller is a celebration of female life. It shows us the various stages of a woman's life and attempts to represent the Indian culture and the role of bangle sellers in a traditional setup. Okay. So now we will look at the poetic devices of the poem. I hope now the poem is absolutely clear to you. There should be no doubt at all regarding the poem. It's a very beautiful poem and a very meaningful one as well. So keep that in mind, that whenever you are going through this poem, keep 2 points in mind. One is the Indianness and the second one is the feminist angle, and then you will definitely, things will fall into places. Now, simile is a figure of speech where one thing is directly compared to the other using the words like, as, or like. So where is the simile? I have already told you, I have mentioned the simile. Silver and blue as the mountains. Some are flushed like the buds that dream. Some are the fields of sunlit, like the fields of sunlit corn. Some like the flame of marriage fire, tinkling, luminous, tender and clear, like her bridal laughter and bridal tear. These are the examples. Metaphor is indirect comparison where there is point of similarity but no word like, no keywords like as or like are used. So the comparison is implicit. For example, rainbow tinted circles of light. So when I was explaining, I told you that there is a metaphor used here. And then we have consonance. Now what is consonance? Very important. Please don't try to, don't be confused with alliteration. Consonance is the repetition of consonant sounds in the neighboring words, or rich with the hue of his heart's desire. Heart's desire. So you can see over here, hue, okay, this is alliteration. Hue of his heart desire, H, which is beginning in the, which is at the beginning of the words. The letter H is repeated, so it's at the beginning of the word. So therefore, that is alliteration. So the repetition of consonant sound at the beginning of the nearby word, that is alliteration. And rich heart desire. So here you have r sound repetition. Then here some meet maiden. Here you have m sound repetition, but that is not in the beginning, so that can be taken as consonants. Okay. So that was all about the beautiful and the colorful poem and the vibrant poem, Bangle Sellers. I hope you have enjoyed today's session about Bangle Sellers. So do comment on the comment section regarding the question, how do you think has the poet, talked about the different stages of women's life, and how do you, correlate with your life, right? So those who are female candidates can write that, but the male candidates can also, of course, write about feminism and how the poet is celebrating womanhood, right? So thank you guys. Take care and share your love. Keep sharing your love and keep commenting. I want your comments. I love to read your comments. Thank you. Bye bye.